AI's Dirty Secret, or How to Spend $500,000 of Supercomputing. Episode 2. AI's Dirty Secret. Robert started writing Monkeys Climbing Trees to Reach the Moon to share with the general audience his amateur understanding of how AI actually works. He ends up being shocked at his own ignorance as a climate activist at the scale of computing's carbon footprint. The more detail Tom goes into about Yellow Dog's clever carbon-reducing tech, the more its significance sinks in. That innocent-sounding, ethereal, floaty concept of cloud computing, it turns out, actually takes place in very much earthbound data centers. These data centers are usually hidden from public view, but they power the internet. They also consume huge amounts of energy just to run idle. An average data center requires enough power to run a small town just to keep their processors from bursting into flames. To avoid turning the lights out in nearby towns, many have their own power stations. As a journalist and now an activist focused on carbon emission reduction, Robert is astonished at both the scale of computing's dirty secret and by its absence from any of the breathless discussions of AI now dominating the mainstream media discourse. The Good Robot articles skip over this inconvenient truth. If AI is going to save the world, why bring up the awkward and distasteful matter of its insatiable appetite for energy? Even the Bad Robot articles focus on futuristic Hollywood visions of robots taking over, enslaving or eliminating humans. The only article Robert can find sounding the alarm about the exponential rise in the Internet's carbon footprint is in a specialist publication for the engineers who design and manufacture the chips that go inside the data centers. Just as extreme weather events have climate scientists who've been predicting them for years banging their heads in frustration, chip engineers can't believe everyone is still ignoring reality. Like climate change itself, the issue of the Internet's growing carbon footprint is no longer a theoretical future problem, but a very real current threat. When chip designers meet, they show each other graphs showing their own hockey stick curve. Instead of concentrations of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, this sudden sharp jump shows the increase in computing power demand created by ChatGPT and all its imitators. AI is turning out to be the computing equivalent of the invention of the internal combustion engine, the impetus for a sudden, massive increase in carbon consumption, just when we need to start slashing it to zero and beyond. And what critical new demand is driving this eating up of our already in the red carbon allowance? Convincing but imaginary pictures of celebrities doing unlikely things, deep-fake porn and disinformation and exam cheating, that's what. Is this what we're going to tell our children we blew our carbon allowance on? Chip engineers ask each other when they meet. Data centers sucked up all our available energy, cancelling out any carbon reductions we made elsewhere for pictures of the Pope in a funny hat? It was easier for Robert to understand why his AI friends ignore this unpleasant reality, easier still why venture capitalists eager to cash in on the next big thing decline to bring it up. After decades climbing the tree, the monkeys wanted to have their day, even if they've not yet reached the moon. Like most climate activists and increasingly the public, Robert is hyper-aware of the carbon profligacy of, for example, the aviation industry. The press is all over it. Flight shaming is clickbait catnip. All those column inches and airtime branding celebrities, politicians and activists as hypocrites for flying to a climate protest or environmental conference. Given all the hot air, it's almost disappointing to learn that aviation accounts for 2% of total global carbon emissions. If this number appears at all, it's usually buried very low in the finger-pointing articles, and you can see why. 2% of anything seems like a trivial thing to spend so much time getting so worked up about. For activists, this is a tricky issue. Treating long-haul flights like local buses is a great symbol of our carbon profligacy and need to adapt to a sustainable lifestyle. But for results-focused activists like Robert, stoking up a highly divisive Twitter storm about something that only generates 2% of emissions also looks like a very effective tactic for vested interests who are merrily pumping out the other 98%. In this light, flight shaming starts to look like a classic dead cat PR trick. If you want to prevent something awkward being discussed, throw a dead cat on the table. It usually changes the subject. Meanwhile, as Tom is patiently teaching Robert, all our apparently harmless paper-free online activities, all those video calls, streaming services, and infinite and eternal access to cat videos are already generating more than twice as much carbon as flying. Worse still, Tom explains, the vast majority of the chips used in the data centers that store and process all this online activity are still designed to optimize performance, not reduce power consumption. Computing power consumption is already at least 4.5% of global emissions. But the large language model breakthrough being celebrated in all those articles about ChatGPT and its imitators will supercharge demand even further. In a series of further long phone calls, Tom explains the tech and science and data behind this dirty secret. Once he's got his head round it, Robert publishes Computing's Carbon Footprint, the Other AI Threat. In episode 3, a surprise donation, Robert receives an unexpected call from Tom just before Christmas.
AI's Dirty Secret, or How to Spend $500,000 of Supercomputing, was narrated by George Hinchliffe, who also wrote the music. It was written, produced and mixed by Robert Stern. The See-Through News podcast is a See-Through News production. See-Through News is a zero-budget social media network with the goal of speeding up carbon drawdown by helping the inactive become active. For more, visit seethroughnews.org. Thank you for listening.